Hello, and welcome to day 5 in our study of Job, chapters 1 and 2. Now, before we dive into these interesting chapters, let's get a little background on the book itself. The book of Job is written by... we don't know. The author never makes themselves known, so it's best to consider this one anonymous. But it was likely an Israelite or a Jew, as there's frequent use of the word Yahweh, or the Lord, in our English translations. An interesting note, as far as the timeline of this book is concerned, is that it was actually likely written around the time of Moses, as Job's wealth was known in terms of his livestock and things of that nature. The purpose of Job is actually quite interesting. It's written in the form of a dramatic poem, but it's true history and not a myth or allegory, even though the dialogues are poetical. There's no doubt that there was a real man named Job. Ezekiel names him with Moses and Daniel in Ezekiel 14:14, and of course we know that Moses and Daniel were both real people. This book is really of great use to the church and to Christians individually, even though some passages are going to be pretty difficult to understand. But that's why I'm here to help. What you'll see here in Job's story is that bad things happen even to good people. Even those who love God and are attempting to live for Him and honor Him lack the understanding and perspective to assess correctly God's way of managing His world. So sometimes things that happen to us or people we know and care about aren't going to make sense to us, and that's okay. And the main theme that you'll notice throughout is where is God in human suffering? That's a question that gets asked a lot when people are going through difficult times, and we'll see if we can gain some insight as we go through the book of Job over the next few months on Thursdays. So without further ado, let's look at Job 1 and 2. Right from the beginning, we see what kind of a man Job was. In fact, verse 1 says there was a man that was perfect and upright and one that feared God and shunned evil. Now, obviously, he wasn't actually perfect. That's the word that the King James uses. But it doesn't mean that he was perfect and that he was sinless, because only Jesus did that. Only Jesus was perfect when he was here on earth. But he respected God's commandments and tried to follow them to the best of his ability. But beyond that, he shunned evil. He avoided it and even all the appearances of it. So Job is just the picture of what a righteous man would look like. So then we look at Satan stirring the pot here in verse 9. And this is kind of this whole book of Job starts with this story with God and Satan having this meeting and this conversation. So look what Satan says here in verse 9. What he does is he really attacks Job's character. God's pointing to Job as a righteous man, and Satan says basically that he's only living that way because his life has been so blessed by you. And so they strike a deal. God believes that Job really loves him and will be faithful, so he tells Satan that he can take everything he has from him, and they'll see how he responds. So if we look at this verse 13 to the end of the chapter, which is where Satan is kind of really turning loose on Job, Satan proceeds to just take everything away. And it all happens in one day. His livestock, where all of his wealth was, because remember, that's how we kind of dated this book. His livestock, his sheep, his goats, everything gone. His children whom he loved died tragically. His servants dead. Everything that Job had was taken away from him. All of this happens in one day, and it's almost comical the way that when Job is being told these things have happened, it's just like one messenger is coming after another, and as soon as one tells him this one bad thing, then the next one happens too. And so Job is having all this thrown on him at once, and look how he reacts. He rips up his clothes, he shaves his head and bows down. I know that first part is a little weird. He rips up his clothes and he shaves his head. That's not really what we should do when we get angry. But Job is doing this to kind of humble himself before the Lord, and he bows. And what does he do? He blessed the name of the Lord. He praised the Lord. So not only did he not get angry at God, he praised God. And I want you to put yourself in Job's shoes for a second. How would you have reacted to this? Because I'm pretty sure that I'd be pretty upset about if I lost everything that I cared about on this earth in one day. I'd be pretty upset. But not only did Job not blame God, he praised him through it. Wow. I think we know that we shouldn't blame God when things go wrong, right? We can be angry at God, whatever, but we shouldn't blame him. But It would be pretty tempting, and when you lose everything in your whole life, to blame God and say, God, how could you let this happen? Job doesn't do that. Job praises God anyway. Chapter 2 comes on. Satan comes to God and says, yeah, he's held up well so far, but that's because he's still in perfect health, right? His physical health has not been touched. So let's see how he reacts when his health is actually affected. So God agrees and says, you know what? You can hurt him, but you can't kill him. And let's see how he reacts. So Satan then gives Job boils from head to toe. And I've never had a boil before, but if you don't know what it is, think about like a really big, nasty, painful pimple. And he had these things all over his body from head to toe. And look what his wife says. When she sees Job going through all this, she said to curse God and die. You must have done something wrong to deserve this. So just go ahead and curse God and die. Wow, how's that for a supportive wife? But I like his response here. And we'll skip past when he starts off with, you speak as a foolish woman speaks. Because as a married man, I know that calling your wife a foolish woman is never a good start to a sentence. But Job says, you speak as a foolish woman speaks. And then he says, shall we accept good from God, and shall we not accept adversity? That's a pretty incredible response from Job. Not only is he not going to curse God, his outlook is, God has given me all these things. If he's going to give me bad things as well, so be it. Again, I don't know about you guys, but I have a hard time believing that that would be my response if I was going through all the things that Job is going through right now. Well, this chapter ends with his 3 friends coming to see him, and they're going to try to comfort him and cheer him up. And when they see him in the distance, they don't even recognize him because of all he's going through. But we're not going to get too deep into that. We're going to look more at these friends. Next week and in the weeks ahead. So that's all for Job 1 and 2. We'll be back tomorrow looking at some prophecy in Isaiah chapters 1 to 6. As always, if you have any questions or comments you'd like to add, feel free to drop those below, or you can reach out personally to me if you wish. So that's all for today. I'll see you guys tomorrow.